What is one story you will never tell your parents? My dad is a mechanic handyman. He had just bought a brand new power saw. I think it was close to $200 and my dad never spent that much money on anything. Plus, we didn't have a lot of money back then. I asked my dad if we could have a dog. To my surprise, he says yes, but it needs to stay outside. So, we had our dog for a month and then it gets cold, so my dad tells me to chain him up in the shop. The next morning, I go to get him out and I see orange pieces of wire all over the place. I left the leash too long and he got to my dad's new saw and devoured that wire. I was so afraid that we would have killed my dog if I told him he had a bad temper, so I just grabbed the saw and threw it in an abandoned home next to ours. 2 weeks later, my dad asks for my help outside. He then has a bright idea that he needs to use his new power saw to cut some wood. Great, he tells me to go get it. Now, I know that it's not in his shop but I go look anyways. I tell him it's not there. He gets angry at me and tells me to look again. I go in there, which seems like an eternity, and come back out empty-handed. My dad flips his shit. He ends up calling the cops and says someone stole his power saw and even filed a report and all that. That was that. He never found out. Went back to wherever and bought the same saw. This happened in 1995. A few years ago, I had a dog and it chewed through my vacuum wire, so I was going to throw it out. My dad stopped by and asked why I was throwing it away and I told him my dog chewed through it. He told me it was an easy fix and fixed it right there with some electrical tape. At a family gathering we were sitting around with my now late grandmother telling stories about when my dad and his brother were kids. My dad told a story about how my grandmother went in to go shopping, and left him and his brother in the car. They were about 8 and 10 years old. They decided to take the car for a joyride around the block, and when they got back, the parking spot was taken. They had to park it somewhere else, and spent hours convincing my grandmother that she had really parked there. After he told that story, my grandmother, who at the time was in her late 80s, jumped up, her eyes here as bright as can be, and she yelled, "I knew I didn't park there." When I was 15, I hired a prostitute. Backstory: I was a lonely kid, fat, going through depression. My mom was at work and I had hours to myself. I went to the store. There was this one lady who was on the corner and, without really realizing how old I was, asked if I wanted to go out on a date. We kind of awkwardly stared at each other for a couple of seconds before, in my totally socially awkward mind, asked her if we could play board games during this date. She looked at me funny, but actually agreed. So we went back to my house and she looked surprised, maybe relieved, when I pulled out a few board games. For the couple of hours, we played chess, she won, and Monopoly, I won. It was honestly a lot of fun. We talked about nothing important, but it was nice to just talk, you know? Eventually, she had to leave, and when I asked how much, she refused the money. I honestly wish I could find her again to give her my thanks. My parents are very conservative, very cautious, and very old-fashioned. Earlier this year I managed to get a solid 2-week vacation. I couldn't decide where to go, so I was just using Kayak and Google Flight Search to find cheap flights and then Google the country and local stuff to do. I found a flight to Egypt for pretty cheap, and always wanted to see the pyramids, so I bought a flight there. Then I decided to try couch surfing. I stayed with an awesome guy and his mom. He picked me up from the airport, showed me around, traveled with me to Sinai, we went diving, snorkeling, athing, lots of stuff. We ended up hitchhiking in the area as our ride fell through, not the safest thing to do anywhere, especially Sinai. But it turned out great, one of my best trips. But never in a million years will I ever tell my mom that I'd traveled alone to Egypt to stay with a stranger from the internets. My mom thinks I got DMJ jaw problems. It clicks doesn't open all the way from chewing ice. I actually got it from giving a really long BJ to my fiancé. I'm female, and I grew up with super strict Catholic parents and went to a Catholic primary high school. My mother was and still is very strict. She told me every day that I wasn't allowed to touch a drop of alcohol until I had turned 21, when the legal drinking age in my country is 18. Seeing, or even being friends with boys was out of the question. Her logic was that it all starts with friendship. So one night I was overseas with a bunch of friends in a hotel room. Having never drank alcohol before, I didn't really know my limits. So I kind of just went for it. Several shots of whiskey and vodka later, I suddenly found myself with 3 other girls, with things getting kind of hot and heavy. The next morning, I woke up very hungover and very naked. Not exactly something I'll be telling my mother when she asks me what I got up to on my holiday. TLDR, didn't need birth control. It was the summer between grade 6 and grade 7. A friend and I decided it'd be cool if we hand-drilled without a vise a few holes in a golf ball to blow it up with some cherry bombs. What I didn't know was that drill bits meant for wood can't hold up to the friction. About halfway into the ball, the bit snaps, and I drive the drill straight into the side of my finger. The worst part of this was when I looked down at my hand and a little blue vein is sticking out of my finger. I quickly turned a ghostly shade of green and ran to my room, my hand wrapped in my shirt. After about 20 minutes of laying on my bed thinking I was about to die, I put a band-aid on my finger, and ignored it for about 2 weeks. Once a couple weeks passed, I took the band-aid off, only to find that the hole had healed with the now dead vein sticking out. Knowing I should have gone to the doctors in the first place, I took some nail clippers and cut it off. I never had any problems after that or said a single word to my parents. I'm sure if I even told them today, my dad, who has 30 years experience in fire and EMS, would lose his shit. I seriously injured my knee last winter. Told my mother it was from slipping on some ice. In reality, I was being nailed from behind and dislocated my knee. I let a guy do coke off my boobs. On Christmas Eve, I told my mom I was out buying last-minute presents. I had a bunch of people over after a high school dance my senior year, this part my mother knows about. What she doesn't know is that I blacked out and fell asleep in my backyard. Some of my friends saw me and put me to bed on the love seat in my basement. When I woke up the next day, typical ha 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 dude, that was awesome conversation elapsed and eventually everyone went home. Being hungover, I decided to go into my room and take a nap. About 3 feet past the door I noticed a black splotch about 4 inches in diameter and thought, oh shit, someone puked on my carpet. And began to try and clean it up. Scrubbed the shit out of it, used all different things I could think of to clean it and nothing budged. After about 15 minutes of trying to clean this thing I realized it wasn't a stain, the motherfucking carpet was burned. I had no idea what to do, so I just threw a pile of clothes on top of it and panicked. A few days later, genius happened. I had a moment of divine intervention, the kind of thing where your entire universe makes sense in an instant. I had to cut off the burned tips of the carpet. I grabbed my tweezers and nail scissors and went to town. One by one I used the tweezers to grab the carpet fibers and snip off the top. Took me about an hour and a half. My brother moved into that room a little over a year ago and no one has said a thing. If this post gains any traction and people have an interest, I can try and dig up some photos I took of the carnage. Edit op to Livars. My essential baptism of fire to my sexuality. I was in a lesbian relationship for 4 years to a woman who worked as a dominatrix. She was 6 years older than me, and I had just turned 16 when we started to get intimate, because she didn't want to do anything when I was younger. My parents just assumed she was a friend, because all of my friends were in that age group. She sometimes had me assisting with her clients. No actual sex, but helping with needle and fire play. That my ex-husband accidentally killed my cat. I told my dad the cat got sick and died. Daddy loved that, so did I. I used to tie up my hamster cage to a couple helium balloons when I was little and would make him float around the house. The time I gave such an amazing BJ that he cried afterward. It was fucking magical. That I lost my virginity in an abandoned house that we broke into. I'm late for the party, but I really hope this one gets seen. I can't hold my laughter while typing. Okay, so I was a teenager and I was living with my mom. She's pretty much the definition of a crazy cat lady and owns about 5 cats. One day I knocked an espresso maker and spilled coffee all over the kitchen. I was already in a hurry, so I had no time to clean it all up. Then it hits me. Come here, kitty kitty kitty. I pick up an unlucky cat and dip its paws on the coffee spilt on the floor. Once, twice, 3 times, making sure it was leaving footprints. For good measure I also put random stuffed pots, silverware, etc. down on the floor or knock it over. Then I get the hell out of home and don't come back in at least 5 hours. When I get home, just as I expected, my mom blames her cats. I'm 31 now and this happened at least 15 years ago, but I will never ever tell her. And don't worry, the cats weren't punished either. Just as I expected. A week before I graduated high school I was kicked out of my parents' house and spent the night on at a boat party in Sausalito, California. At this party a drunk bitch pushed me off the dock when I was taking a leak and I lost my phone, my cigarettes and my car keys, which, incidentally, belonged to my parents. The next morning I had my friend drive me back to my parents' house in his car so I could sneak in and grab the valet key, then drove me back so I could take the car to work. A year later, I went on a trip with my friends in this same car to the north of California, close to the Oregon border, so they could purchase some weed. They bought it and stuck it in the trunk of the car and drove back. Around 3 in the morning the next day, the 4th of July, 2009, we were pulled over by the highway patrol officer who pulled us out and began to search the car. He took my key and went to open the trunk of the car. Because I had lost my original key a year ago. Because I had to use the valet key, and because the valet key doesn't open the trunk of a Chrysler Sebring 98. Never found it. But, They did take the box of M&M's powdered donut holes from the front seat. My story on how I was experimenting with men to see what it's like. One time my friends and I were tripping on shrooms and we had been watching an Oz marathon on HBO. Once the show was over we all felt like we had to get out of the house, so still tripping, we got in the car. I was driving. We stopped and got like $21 cheeseburgers from McDonald's. We lived close to a beautiful lake with a lovely drive around it, but the road kind of abruptly ends in the ghetto. So we have a fantastic flower-filled drive around the lake but then end up in the projects. We are sitting at red light, eating cheeseburgers when this homeless bag lady starts walking toward the driver's side window. I'm trying to ignore her because they always want money or cigarettes and I'm totally still tripping balls. She knocks on the window and I'm ignoring her. She starts yelling about a cheeseburger. My friend is in the back seat, a cheeseburger in each hand, cheeseburger hanging out of his mouth. He yells, "We ain't got no motherfucking cheeseburgers." I was so freaked out that I ran the red light and almost wrecked. Till a lot of Redditors do coke. Why I really had to have surgery on my knee. I had a motorcycle accident. How much I remember of her boyfriends when we were growing up. A lot of it isn't pretty. Nice try, mom. Probably how I lost my virginity at 18 to a 32-year-old. And that I lied when I said I was going out with friends, and instead met up with him. Had a threesome in college. The other female involved ended up working as an intern at my father's company. I was the one who recommended her to my dad when he said they were taking on new interns. She interned for a year then took a paying job in their marketing department. I still see her at the company Christmas party. 10-10 would bang again. The fact that I faked an injury so I wouldn't have to go to school, because I couldn't stand sewing classes on Friday. I only did it once though, but once is enough. That I'm adopted. My second year in college, some of my friends and I were going to be playing in a softball beer drinking tournament in a town 45 minutes away from my parents' house. We started drinking around 8 in the morning and continued to drink all day long. At about 10 p.m. I've had enough of being at the park. My ex-girlfriend showed up and want to go to a bar near my parents' house. So 6 of us load up into my small car and we proceed to drive to this bar. I shouldn't have been driving myself, let alone a car full of my friends. We get to the bar and continued drinking until bar close at 2:30 and we pile back into my car. I live in the country which has surprisingly smooth roads with no cops, so I do the drunk thing and top out my car. I was going roughly 120 when I heard the back window open. I look back and one of my friends is climbing out and climbing onto the roof. I look up through my moon roof and I see him sitting pretzel-legged with his arms outstretched with the biggest smile on his face. I started freaking out a little bit, so I slowed down to 70. He rode on the roof the whole way home from the bar, which is about a 10-minute ride. We all slept in the basement and when we woke up my mom's like, "Wow, you guys must have been crammed in the car," and I go, "No, it was pretty comfortable. We had a guy on the roof." I never lie to my parents, I just tell them in ways that makes it sound non-believable. The conversation I will never have with my mother. Remember the pool boy you hired on the weekends to help out in the backyard to raise money for his sick grandmother? Yes, he was such a great kid. And a great lover. They still haven't fully caught on to what happened during the 9 days that they were gone, and it was just my brothers and I. And about 70 people, 2 kegs, and a lot of weed. 2 of us are underage and my older brother's is 21 and the freaking man. But they did see $280 from a beverage store on his debit card. He said it was for his friends. Now that me and my siblings are in our 20s, my mom keeps bugging us to fess up on everything we kept from her as teens kids. I guess she figures that the statute of limitations has run out if she has gone this long without her finding out. My brother and sister are both pretty big partiers and potheads, but I'm pretty average. It's not like I haven't tried that stuff or anything, but I'm not as wild as they are. I'm certain that my sister has some crazy stories that she isn't telling, and my brother probably has some too, but mine is that I secretly took and paid for my own piano lessons. The context is that I'm about to finish an undergrad in a music program. In first and second year I messed up registering for courses and my parents ended up having to pay for some expensive summer courses so I could graduate on time. They were pretty upset about that, but I didn't tell them that I also had to pass a piano proficiency exam. Everyone in music does, no matter what their instrument or specific degree is. I already felt bad that they had to pay a few $100s because of a dumb mistake that I had made, so I didn't have the heart to tell them they'd need to pay a few $100 more for piano lessons, so I'm paying for them out of my own pocket. Hanging out with friends during senior year of high school. Someone dares me to shit in a sock was like a knee-high sock. What was I to do? Of course I did it. Other friend then takes the sock and goes outside to where a few unlucky and unwanted girls were and started hitting them with the shit sock. Later the same girls were asleep in the bed of a truck and were peed on. Sock part of this awesome story to tell, hitting girls with said sock douche the next day. My GF, now my wife simply walks up to me, "Her, did you shit in a sock last night?" Me, yup. Her, okay. She just laughed and walked away. That's how I knew she was the one. This will probably get buried, but when I was in middle school my group of friends had food thrown at them and I tried to settle things with the food thrower by talking to didn't listen and threw more food, so I slugged the side of his face so hard I cut his eye and partially damaged his sight too. I ended up fracturing my pinky, and when my parents saw my hand I told them I fractured it from basketball. To this day, they don't know I damaged another kid's eye. Doctor punched someone so hard I fractured my hand and damaged his eyesight in one eye. Me and a friend of mine were at a Marilyn Manson concert a year ago. So while we were waiting for the concert to start, some highly intoxicated woman walks up to me and my friend and yells in my ear, "How old are you?" At first I really didn't want to reply in case she does something weird. I have anxiety issues. And so I finally replied and said I'm 16. Then she proceeds to ask, "Is this your first Manson concert?" I said yes. She replied with, "I went to my first Manson concert when I was 14. You're well on your to being like me." Me and my friend thought, great, we're on our way to being like her. Then out of the blue she pulls up her shirt and starts waving her tits around and says, "I bet you have never seen tits this close before." She continuously does this until she finally leaves, making me and my friend think WTF just happened. Edit fuck. When I was in high school senior year, my friends and I thought it would be hilarious to list a ton of items on Craigslist and put the school's number as the point of contact. We did it for tons of stuff: lockers, desks, gym equipment, and used actual pictures of our school's stuff for added authenticity. We posted all this under the free section with a description like "retired school equipment. Call prior to pickup" in every major city in America. It was all fun and games until the school started reporting over 300 calls a day for weeks on end. Assuming an 8-hour day and that 200 of those calls were made during those 8 hours, that's one call every 2.5 minutes. It made life hell for the office. Eventually, Crime Stoppers was brought in and rewards were offered. We graduated and forgot all about it. About a month later, my 7 friends and I, 2 months into freshman year of college, I get a call from one of my friends who says that he'd been called up by our hometown's police and questioned and promptly cracked under the pressure. He'd already fessed up. I get a call from those same police while I'm on the phone with him and proceed to lie about having any knowledge regarding the event. I then call him back, and he tells me he already told them I was in on it. Crap. So long story short, 3 of us, the raid and the 2 people he'd given up along with himself, get a crap ton of community service in our hometown. I visited on holidays and weekends to knock off the hours, and I always told my parents I was doing volunteer work around the school. They bought it. I'll never tell them I've never volunteered for a thing a day in my life. I come from a really sheltered family. I'm 20, and still can't have a girlfriend. Therefore, underage drinking is basically a huge no-no to my parents. I was 17 when I first started college. To celebrate my transformation into adulthood, I went drinking in my buddy's dorm room on my birthday. It was stupid at the time, I know. We got a bit too loud, someone called the cops on us, they gave us all MIPS for being hammered at 2 a.m. on the day of my birthday. I was devastated. I got lucky. They marked me as an adult since I had turned 18 2 hours prior. I didn't need my parents to go to court with me. I go to court by myself and got put into a diversion program. I arrange a meeting with someone from the dean's office. She tells me that I'm placed on probation, meaning if there is one more complaint against me, they will kick me out of the dorms, imposed a huge fine, made me do 30 hours of community service, and said that she would send a letter to my parents. The last one was the worst. I knew once they saw that letter that my parents would make me go to school closer to home. I flirted with the lady, the next hour. Convinced her to tell me when they would send the letter. Surprised my parents the weekend the letter went home, took it out of the mail and ripped it into shreds. No one in my family knows. This happened 2 years ago. I'm in 11th grade. So I had fallen in with some stoner kids since we all skated, and it was Halloween. It was maybe 9:30, and we were bored, outside the local middle school. My friend, let's say Jim, mentions that a classic prank would be to rearrange the letters on the school sign. We laugh about it, but nobody does anything. Eventually I get up to check out the sign, and find the locks on the sign cover open. I call Jim over and we set to work. The final result was everyone fist your teacher's ass. It was a good Halloween. Eventually one of the parents from across the street called the cops. We heard sirens. Cops in small towns have nothing to do, it seems. We bowled, but not before I took a picture. I'll upload it as proof. Update, can't seem to get it off my phone. Sorry guys. I fucked in their bed when they were on vacation. I went to Punta Cana, Dominican Republic with 5 guy friends and 1 other girlfriend as a sort of spring break. I'm a girl. This becomes important later. So one of our excursions of our all-inclusive trip is a night at this club called Imagine. This club is in a cave and in order to get there we had to take a cab like 45 minutes from our hotel. Okay, so, we're in the middle of nowhere, in a country we do not know, in a cave and it's an open bar. This becomes a problem when young, dumb me decides to drink all the drinks. I proceed to get wasted, and black out. From things my friends have told me, I basically started puking my guts out for 2 hours straight. I'm in the bathroom, the one other girl is holding up my body and helping me puke in the toilet. My guy friend is holding the other side of my body, someone keeps yelling at him to get out of the ladies' room but he literally has to stay and hold my body up. I remember flashes of me drinking water, puking, my friend rubbing my back, me saying to take me to a hospital or back to the hotel, my friends saying we can't do that because our cab wouldn't be back until 4 a.m. and we had no idea where we were. So somehow I made it till 4, we get into a cab and make it back. I knock out and have the worst hangover of my entire life. My mother, as long as I live, will never hear this. She would definitely freak the hell out. Hell, if that was my daughter I would freak the hell out. TLDR went to a cave, blacked out. My friends and I went fishing at a lake and didn't catch anything. One of them went to the ABC store to pick up some liquor and we got drunk at the lake. Short story is that I almost drowned in 2 feet of water. While we were leaving they decided it would be great to throw rocks at the people fishing. Well, that didn't go so well because they hit a guy and he decided to go to his car and pull out his gun. So we jumped into my friend's car all drunk and drive off 100 miles per hour for at least 30 miles. How I got home that night, but I still have screenshot memories of my friend driving like a fucking retard and passing people on a single lane at 100 miles per hour. So I almost died 3 times in one day. TLDR, as a stupid teenager I got drunk at a lake and almost drowned, almost got shot by an angry fisherman, and could have died in a car crash going 100 miles per hour. When I was 21, my girlfriend's parents went out of town for a weekend. Naturally, we had all kinds of sex while they were gone. One afternoon we had just finished banging. I tied a condom in a knot to avoid spillage, my signature move, and discarded in her trash can in her bedroom. Late at night we come home drunk to find her trash is strewn everywhere in her room. Right in the mess is a latex knot with no condom full of jizz attached to it. So obviously her dumb shit little dog ate my condom. I was a vet tech at the time, so I got a turkey baster with a few teaspoons of salt and the rest warm water. I force-fed it to her dog who then barfed up a whole condom. Not exactly what I wanted to do while drunk late at night, but it was cool to apply my skills outside of work. Still probably won't tell my parents. Definitely not my mom. That I bought my mom her Mother's Day present with money I won from amateur night at the local strip joint. How I met my wife. I will however tell my kids about every woman that I banged, and all the crazy shenanigans that my friends and I got up to before meeting their mother. That I got hammered at 14 on half a liter of vodka, got my first blowjob and then threw up everywhere and blacked out, had to be dragged through a field by my best mate to get to his house. Dad, remember Karen? Your old friend from when you were younger? Her husband had left her and she was feeling blue, so you and Mum brought her over to the pub I was working at. I cooked your meals myself, served you, then took my break to come and chat. When Mum went to the bathroom and you went to get more drinks from the bar, I convinced Karen to come back later on in the evening as I had to work an extra long shift and it would be nice to have someone to talk to when I got off. Well, she came back and we really hit it off. After a few drinks I mentioned that I should probably get home to have a shower because I was still in my kitchen clothes. We ended up back at her place that night and spent a very passionate night together. And although she went out for drinks with your friend you had set her up with a few weeks later, it didn't work out for different reasons than what you thought. It wasn't that he was creepy. It was because we were sort of seeing each other. It was mostly about sex, and holy crap was it good. We continued to see each other for another 5 months until she found a man her own age, someone she could have a real relationship with. It ended well between us. We parted ways as friends. We both knew what we had wouldn't last. Christ, there was a 25-year age gap. I don't regret a thing. It was amazing for both of us. Sorry Dad, but I will never tell you about that. Let's just say my girlfriend and my parents love her started dating because of vodka. Apparently I wouldn't let anyone else touch my Smirnoff that night. Woke up with an empty bottle and a girlfriend. One day senior year a few friends and I decided to eat some weed edibles. Originally, we wanted to go hiking, so I brought my gym bag with me. After eating the edibles, we decided to not hike, so we went to chill in a friend's basement. We all got high as balls. I put my phone and my wallet in my gym bag, and dozed off on a couch. Suddenly, I was woken up by horrible retching and the sound of a torrent of liquid. Still blazed out of my mind, I looked towards the source of the sound and saw my friend puking non-stop for at least 10 seconds into my gym bag. With my phone and wallet inside. I was too high to fully comprehend what I was seeing, so I just chilled there staring for a few minutes as my friend literally puked non-stop into the bag. After that, it suddenly hit me that fuck, my phone and wallet are submerged in a bag of puke. I started to have a panic attack, thinking about how screwed I was. My friend decided to dispose of the gym bag, which was literally filled to the top with puke, by going upstairs and throwing it in the backyard. Meanwhile, I started to feel extremely nauseous, like I was going to puke too. I ran upstairs, and made it just in time before I unleashed a wave of vomit into the toilet. In the end, I managed to convince my parents that I lost my phone and wallet by accidentally dropping them in a stream. If they ever found out what really happened, things would not turn out well. Smoking not one, but 3 whole dopes whilst on vacation. Nice try, Dad. Pretty much anything I have done or ever will do. We ran out of matches and lighters, so we decided to start lighting fireworks using the gas stove and rolled up paper towels. One of these shitty torches ruptured and lit the carpet on fire. We stomped it out and poured water on it, but a solid square foot was scorched, and smelled awful throughout the house. I wasn't supposed to be setting off fireworks at all, much less unsupervised or carrying flame through the house. My ass would be toast if I got caught. We left the doors open to air out the house, sprayed Lysol everywhere so nobody could smell anything else, and rubbed a little dog shit elsewhere on the carpet so we could say we missed a spot when cleaning up a puppy accident across the room. This justified the potent Lysol scent. A little strategic Febreze and the set was taken care of. Just the tips of the carpet fibers were black, not the whole thing, so I trimmed them with scissors, but it was already threadbare to begin with. So I cut a little off the surrounding carpet, too, and then a little less off the carpet surrounding that, etc. After trimming about 20 square feet of carpet with a slight gradient, we moved every piece of surrounding furniture about 4 inches west. This made pathing through the burnt area slightly awkward. Then I complained about barking my shins for a few weeks and mentioned how old the couch looked. It wasn't long before we rearranged the furniture, and I managed to get the new couch placed directly on top of the shallow spot. 13 years later and nobody else knows. The carpet was replaced last summer. I'm in the clear. Sadly, the one story I would never tell my parents, a friend of mine walked to their house, knocked on their door, and brought them to the situation. I just turned 18 at the time and I got a flight to Beijing month in a language school. I'm from Poland. Anyway, first day, I got some dude at the apartment block to write down the address for me. He spoke super bad English. I went to vote in the embassy. It was voting day in my country and I took a taxi to get back to the apartment block. The taxi went to a completely different place. I was scared, like, really. It was still bright, so I was like, okay, not calling my parents, I have to do it on my own. I've started wandering around, but the address the dude wrote down for me was wrong. It was also not the best of neighborhoods. No one spoke English, my Chinese was super basic. I got found, but my parents still don't know. I told them I was a little off my street, while it took me 5 hours to find the place I was staying. TL Doctor, I am from Poland. I got lost in Beijing traveling alone while 18, in a dodgy neighborhood. Tell her parents about all the chemicals inside their couch. Broke into an old abandoned paper mill, probably 10 times by now. The last time I went there was the first time we set off an alarm. This alarm was to one specific room, in a building of approximately 30 rooms and corridors. The building is not supposed to have any power going to it, let alone to a room, due to its condition. This leads me to believe that the surrounding neighborhood has set up an alarm system in this one specific room. I didn't get a good look into the room, but instead, immediately sprinted upon setting off the alarm. Within 2 minutes, there were 3 residents outside the building, eyeing it with flashlights. One resident had blocked off the 1-lane bridge, the only access to the building. How did I know this? After about 30 minutes of hiding in the brush near the train tracks close by, I attempted to have a good friend come pick me up, as I saw no real way to escape effectively. He tried to cross the bridge. The truck sped at him at about 80 miles an hour, chased him all the way out of the neighborhood and past a gas station a good 2 miles away. They're hiding something in there, something terrible. Relevant: we found a pile of hundreds of bottles of old cough syrup, sealed, in another building very close by. We'll post pictures and more in-depth story if enough interest anyone asks.